You know, I had a sort of a vision years ago. I was praying about our church, and I saw a train on a track, and I saw it going and trying to go in the direction of God's purpose and plan. But there were sparks coming out of the wheels. It was moving very slow. It was going in a forward direction, but it was moving very slowly. And I somehow intuitively knew that this was Mount Hope Church. This train was Mount Hope Church. And it was like almost as if there was a camera panning the train. And I saw like 5 engines on the front of the train. Well, you would think with 5 powerful engines, that train ought to be speeding along. And then it panned back, and I saw 3 engines hooked up backwards on the train, trying to pull the train in the other direction. All of them were engines, the 5 in the front and the 3 in the back. They were all engines. But 5 were moving in the direction of God's purposes, and 3 were moving in the other direction. And so the Lord said, the 5 engines are like Isaac, ministry and leadership that's after the promise and after the Spirit. The 3 engines in the back going the other way are like Ishmael. They're after the flesh. This is my ministry. I want to do this. I'm building my empire. And they're actually holding back the church. And the Lord said, you have to disconnect those 3 engines. Now, who wants to disconnect a ministry? In the church, you know, everybody, you've got ministry going, and it looks good. It's an engine. It's powerful. But it wasn't taking us in the right direction. And I came to the congregation one Sunday night, and I said, look, the Lord gave me a picture of Ishmael ministry and Isaac ministry. Isaac ministry is pulling us in the right direction. Ishmael ministry pulling us in the wrong direction. Ishmael man-made, Isaac God-made. And I said, every plant my Father has not planted must be uprooted, and we're going to disconnect all the Ishmael ministry in the church. Everything that was born of a committee, everything that was born of a brainstorm, everything that was born of a good idea, everything that was born because we attended a conference and somebody else was doing it, so we thought we should be doing it, is going to be disconnected. And I asked the Lord, how will I know which is the Ishmael ministry? And he said, don't worry, they'll come up and identify themselves and tell you that theirs is not an Ishmael ministry. And I remember after that, first thing, I didn't tell the congregation that, but a lady came up to me. She said, Pastor, I know my ministry is not an Ishmael, but if you want me to disengage, I will. And I said, okay, I do. And sure enough, she left the church because she couldn't do her ministry in the church. Her ministry was more important than authentic ministry. And you see, I'm going to show you in the moments ahead how to be sure you have authentic ministry. Everything that shines, you've heard this, everything that glitters is not gold. There's such a thing as fool's gold. It looks like gold, it feels like gold, but it isn't real gold, it's fool's gold. And it's interesting that Jesus talked about false prophets, and throughout the New Testament, false teachers, false apostles, false brothers. There is a counterfeit. Now, I'm not saying every synthetic ministry, the person is not born again, because often they're born again and they've come under the gospel of Jesus Christ, but they've never learned the gospel of the kingdom. They've never learned how to operate from the kingdom. That makes them synthetic. What's the difference? Well, synthetic and authentic look a lot alike. It's sort of like when I was a bachelor, you know, I had a little 720 square foot bachelor pad on a dead-end street. And I was working 8-10 hours a day, going to school as well, and doing my ministry studies, just a young bachelor. And my mother would come over and she'd say, David, you need to get some flowers around this house. And I could care less about flowers. You know, I would rather just put gravel in or something than to have to deal with flowers. But every time she'd come around, David, you need to get some greenery and some flowers around this house. It would make it look so much more beautiful. And she just kept on me. Well, one day I was out to Kmart, and they said, ladies and gentlemen, there's a flashing blue light special. and it was on plastic flowers. They were a nickel a piece. So I went over to the department that sold all the plastic flowers, and I bought it, 40 of them. I got yellow ones, blue ones, green, red ones, and they were just beautiful. And I took them home, and within 5 minutes, I had a flower garden. I shoved those things down in the ground, and my mother drove by and called me and said, "David, you have a green thumb and didn't know it. Those flowers are just beautiful." Then the snow came. I was the only one in the neighborhood that had flowers peeking out of the snow. Now, those flowers from a distance looked a lot like the real thing. But you get up close to the tulip and you find every tulip is exactly alike. They came out of the same press. And you also find that none of those synthetic tulips had any flaws. You look at a real tulip and there may be a little brown vein or just a little piece of an edge that's not symmetric with the rest. What I'm saying is the synthetic often looks real, but then you look a little closer and you find out they never admit any flaws. The authentic may have a few flaws, but at least the authentic can reproduce and give you a beautiful, authentic aroma, a tenderness, a fragrance, and they have the power to reproduce themselves in the seed.